Thank you so much for the honor. It's really, truly a privilege to be back in the hospital where I was actually treated and to be amongst so many friends and incredible supporters. So this was me, 8 years ago at the age of 29. I was in the prime of my life, had a stable and rewarding job at the Anti-Defamation League, which is a leading civil rights firm that focuses on eradicating anti-Semitism and hate. My job took me all over the world. I had the opportunity to train young adults on trends in anti-Semitism, and in March, I returned from leading a trip of 30 young adults to Berlin. I decided to fly back to Chicago and then turn around and go to Buenos Aires, where a friend of mine was living. I remember arriving in Buenos Aires feeling just completely exhausted. I was able to justify the exhaustion because I had just spent the last 10 days chaperoning my peers who somewhere along the way forgot how to take responsibility for themselves. So I was in charge of potty breaks and getting to places on time. It was not exactly glamorous, but it was an incredible trip. So when I finally arrived in Buenos Aires, I started to try my best to adjust to 10 p.m. dinners, 2 a.m. dance clubs, 9 a.m. bedtimes. It became very clear that I could not keep up. The more that I ate, the more the weight seemed to come off. And the more I slept, the more exhausted I felt. And then the flu-like symptoms hit. Every few weeks, I had fevers, aches, pains that led me to doctors with a prescription for rest. So I rested, but I didn't get better. Over a period of 10 months, I experienced viral meningitis, difficulty breathing, and a pinched nerve. On December 20th, 2010, after my orthopedist decided to schedule an MRI, which then led to a CT scan, I heard the words, "You have cancer." And life, as I knew it, changed forever. I made a decision that night that I was going to fight cancer with the tenacity in which I wanted to live. I was determined to be here, and I was going to use every experience, every setback, every tool in my toolkit to manage this uncharted territory. I was all in. Getting sick over the holidays was not ideal. It meant that it was hard to get an appointment, and I needed a team of doctors to weigh in on my case. At the time of my diagnosis, I had been dating a boy named Mark for about 6 months. We had just returned from Thanksgiving, I had met his family, and I had the opportunity to meet his sister Bonnie. Bonnie was a reporter at Time magazine, and her specialty was infertility and women's health issues. When I was diagnosed with cancer, Mark reached out to his family, and sure enough, I received a call from Bonnie. She apologized that she was being so straightforward, but she told me that I absolutely had to reach out to Dr. Woodruff, who was the leading expert at the hospital where I was about to be treated. So I have to admit, I thought Bonnie was really pushy. She had a lot of nerve to talk to me about fertility issues, and I didn't even know what type of cancer I had. But as the days went by, I was struggling to find a way to regain some semblance of control. During the Christmas holidays, it was hard to schedule a biopsy and get in with an oncologist. Eventually, and thankfully, I was paired up with Dr. Leo Gordon in early January. But during that period of wait, I felt like the wait was literally and figuratively killing me. So during this waiting period, I went online and I researched Dr. Woodruff. And I learned a lot about the work at the Oncofertility Consortium. And I figured it couldn't hurt to reach out and figured that it would help me feel a little bit proactive during this in-between period. I sent an email to Teresa, and she answered nearly immediately. She picked up the phone and comforted me during what was such a vulnerable and anxiety-producing period. Within 2 days, I had an appointment set up. I found our first email. Dear Dr. Woodruff, my name is Jenna Benn, and I'm a friend of Bonnie's. It's my understanding Bonnie reached out to you yesterday regarding my situation. I was diagnosed with lymphoma 2 days ago, and they believe that I have Hodgkin's. I won't have the final results until after my PET scan and biopsy, which is taking place on January 3rd. It's my understanding that treatment's going to move quickly, and I want to make sure fertility is being taken seriously in this whole process. I'd very much like to have a family one day, so I'd like to learn more about my options and get the ball rolling. I was hoping to set up an appointment this week to figure out what my next steps are. Thank you so much for responding to Bonnie and for all your help. This was after our call. Hi, Jenna. Glad you're getting in tomorrow. Stay in touch and don't hesitate to reach out for anything else. We're all on your team. Oh, Kristin. So once I had an appointment set up with the Oncofertility Consortium, I met with Dr. Ralph Kaiser, Kristin Smith, and a psychologist who helped me glean a better understanding of the process and next steps. It was a lot to take in, but luckily the team that Dr. Woodruff assembled all were equipped to answer my questions and support me. After my biopsy in early January, it was initially concluded that I had Hodgkin's lymphoma, and I began fertility treatment. I vividly remember that first call with you. You were on vacation with your husband in Florida, and you spent nearly, I think it was almost 2 hours, honestly, Kristin, with me on the phone answering every question. And I was a pretty annoying and thorough patient. Does it hurt? How expensive is it going to be? Are there grants available? Will insurance cover it? What happens if it doesn't work? What kinds of side effects can I expect? Will I be able to go to work? Will this in any way impact my cancer protocol, treatment protocol? And where are my eggs going to be stored? I had a lot of questions, but you just stayed on the phone with me, and you never rushed me through the process. You were there every step. And you were also there for me at 9:30 at night when I was nervous that I had messed up the syringe, the first one. She sent me video tutorials, stayed on the phone until I had the confidence to administer the treatment on my own. Kristin went above and beyond the call of duty. I could tell that she was deeply invested in helping to ensure that there would be life after cancer. She was my cheerleader, my guide, my guru through fertility and cancer treatment. And when fertility preservation ran its course, Kristin did not step down. She just kept showing up. She came to every round of chemo, every event I've ever thrown since, and I feel lucky now to be able to call her a friend. Before I even knew what would be involved in saving my own life, I was taking active measures to ensure that there would be life after cancer. This small act ultimately changed the way that I thought about cancer. Being able to envision motherhood while I was still in the fight for my life gave me the hope that I needed to guide me through the storm. I was determined to one day be able to bring life into the world, and so the experience of fighting cancer was not just for me, but it was for my future family. Envisioning life after cancer ultimately saved my life. I'm going to just say that again. Envisioning life after cancer ultimately saved my life. So what do I really mean by that? Well, when I was first diagnosed with cancer, they thought I had Hodgkin's. And so they did the biopsy on January 3rd, and after the meetings of the mind, the recommendation was that I start ABVD. Dr. Gordon, my extraordinary oncologist, felt that while I underwent fertility preservation, they would send a sample to Dr. Elaine Jaffe at NCI to rule out any other possibilities. This borrowed time, this period when I was undergoing fertility, was when they were figuring out what type of cancer I truly had. Right before my egg retrieval, I was on the phone with Dr. Gordon, and the testing revealed that I did not have Hodgkin's lymphoma, but a rare type of cancer called gray zone lymphoma. And it required a very different treatment protocol. Instead of doing outpatient treatment, I now had to do 6 rounds of REPOC, which necessitated 5 to 6 days of 24-hour infusions done inpatient. The chemo was intense, and I was forewarned that it would most likely cause sterility. On January 20th, I underwent an egg retrieval procedure, which thankfully was successful, and on January 22nd, I began treatment to kill the cancer that was ravaging my body. Throughout the months of fertility treatment and cancer treatment, I had a lot of time on my hands, and I started to realize that fighting a rare type of cancer as a young adult throws your hopes and dreams into a state of delirium. As my experiences became distilled into a series of cherished moments, time was no longer my own. Life, as I knew it, felt like it was on hold. And so as I learned to exist in this holding pattern, I started to notice that young adults with cancer have a unique set of needs that aren't often being talked about and are certainly not being met. And when we don't talk about what's hard, we feel shame. And it was that shame that tried to paralyze me, but instead inspired me. It was during this year of introspection that I came away with a few key strategies of how to manage my cancer crisis. I started to see my crisis as an opportunity. I had to accept the situation I was in order to come up with a plan to manage it. Once I embraced it, I was able to see it as an opportunity for growth, not only for me, but for others around me. I started to dream big. When I was diagnosed with cancer, I knew I would be fighting for my life, but I never gave up on that chance to one day bring life into the world. And when you have nothing left to lose, it's the best time to dream big. And I also realized the critical importance of connecting with others. Enduring a crisis can be lonely, and it's critical to connect with others who get it. Finding a crisis soulmate and building my squad really allowed me to get through a very challenging period. These were the tools that allowed me to find meaning in suffering, and they also inspired me to build the community that I was so desperately seeking. During treatment, I started writing in a blog that was really just a way to update family and friends about what I was going through. And inevitably, I left out some key people who were pissed, and so I opened it up. And I just started writing, and I forgot that it was public, and then started to realize that there were a lot of people that were reading. I think there was some level of fascination. Here was a young adult in the prime of her life, really being very vocal about all the different issues I was experiencing. But I found that I had this team of cheerleaders that were there and that were active and that were supporting me, and I was really desperate to figure out who the faces were behind the statistics. So after my third round of treatment, I put up a video of myself doing the twist, as in Chubby Checkers, the twist. And I said, who's joining me on the dance floor? And within a couple days, we had a couple thousand people twisting out cancer. I found that the more that I shared my experiences, the more the world opened up. And when I finished treatment, I was desperate to do something meaningful with my experience. Cancer was a humbling and clarifying experience, and I was driven to help others, and I felt that I had acquired this unique set of skills and experiences that could help build the community that I wish I had. So from crisis came opportunity, the opportunity to build community. So Twist Out Cancer is an organization I started about 6 months after I finished cancer treatment. And it has changed in shape and size. Initially, it was an online platform where people could share their twist on cancer, lessons learned, fighting strategies, new perspectives, and put out challenges that were meaningful to them. Similar to me, where I asked for people to join me on the dance floor. That may not resonate with, a big football player out in Michigan who's undergoing treatment. So it was really specific based on what people needed, and we really created a community where people could respond to those needs. But then we had this amazing young woman named Anna Swarthout, who was also a gray zone lymphoma survivor, who I met through my oncologist. And I told her what we were doing, and she was one of the first people to put a video up of her bald in the middle of treatment. And her challenge to the community was create a unique work of art, not using the shade of gray, because gray was all that she was seeing. And within a couple days, we had people all over the world that were creating art in her honor. So from that challenge, it morphed into a program, which is called Brushes with Cancer. We've been doing this now for 6 years, and it's essentially a 6-month program that matches individuals touched by cancer, so previvors, caregivers, survivors, and we identify survivors as anyone that's heard those 3 words, you have cancer, because you've survived that experience, that life-changing experience. And we match them with artists, and we have mentors that oversee that relationship to ensure that they're feeling supported and heard. And the inspirations essentially share their story and have a platform in which to share it, and the artists are then charged with creating unique works of art reflective of their journey. And we have big art exhibitions and parties around this to raise awareness and to create a space to tell those stories. And since 2012, we have touched over 16,500 people in Chicago, Toronto, Montreal, Detroit, and Tel Aviv. Here are just a couple images of brushes in action. So when I finished treatment, I was a bit of a hot mess. I was recently single, I was frail, I was sickly, and my ego was in the toilet. I had a lot of questions that seemingly had no answers. Would I ever fall in love? Would someone ever feel ready to take on the baggage I was carrying? Would I ever be in a position of privilege to view my cancer journey as a distant memory? A few months after I finished treatment, I was set up on a blind date with David Shersher, who coincidentally lived a few doors away from me during my time in Montreal. We met at Cortino's, which is a family restaurant down the street, had a 7-hour dinner, fell in love fast and hard. He did not see my baggage as baggage, but he saw them as gifts. He saw the wisdom I acquired during this challenging period of time and was eager to learn from me. I met David when he was in his 3rd year of general residency at Rush, dreaming of one day becoming a cancer surgeon. We both felt this sense of appreciation for each other's path, and our conversations were far from light. Instead, they were deep, thoughtful, and real. 3 months later, we were engaged. 18 months later, we were married in Tel Aviv, a place I always dreamed of returning to if I ever became well enough. Shortly after we were married, I called up Dr. Kaiser to consult him about starting a family. He ran a few tests, and it became clear that my hormone levels were low. The likelihood of being able to conceive naturally was slim. He said, give it a good try for a year, and let's consider next steps. After a few months, I suffered a miscarriage. And while it was devastating, it also was hopeful. This meant my body was recovering, and that maybe I would be able to have children. I was no longer considered to be in menopause, and so it was a lot to wrap my head around. We eventually found a way to move forward and continued trying, and a few months later, I was getting ready to have a consult with Dr. Kaiser about fertility options, and right before my appointment, I became pregnant. Noah, I'm gonna for sure cry at this because it's just, Noah was born April 21st, 2015. She was determined to be here, and she continues to defy the odds in so many ways. She is a constant reminder that life is not only fragile, but is miraculous. So I stand before you today, again a hot mess, because modern medicine saved my life. It not only treated my cancer, but it gave me a sense of hope for a future family, and I will be forever indebted to the incredible team at the Oncofertility Consortium, who in essence provided us with hope, but also with this fabulous insurance policy in the case we ever need it. And if it had not been for your kindness, and for your kindness, Kristin, my narrative and my story, I am sure, would have been different. And so I'm going to finish my side of the presentation quickly with my daughter's favorite book. And it's also my favorite book. And if you haven't read it recently, I suggest that you do. It's called Oh, the Places You'll Go by Dr. Seuss. So there's this one page where Noah always gets hung up, and I do some funny voices. I'm not going to do them for you right now. But I woke up in the middle of the night this week, and I was like, I don't know how to finish this presentation. And then it came to me that I had to finish it with this. So there's this part in the story that talks about the weight. You can get so confused that you'll start into race, down long wiggled roads at a breaknecking pace, and grind on for miles, cross weirdish, wild space, headed, I fear, towards a most useless place, the waiting place. For people just waiting. Waiting for a train to go, or a bus to come, or a plane to go, or the mail to come, or the rain to go, or the phone to ring, or the snow to snow, or the waiting around for a yes or no, or waiting for their hair to grow. Everyone is just waiting. Waiting for the fish to bite, or waiting for the wind to fly a kite, or waiting around for Friday night, or waiting perhaps for their Uncle Jake, or a pot to boil, or a better break, or a string of pearls, or a pair of pants, or a wig with curls, or another chance. Everyone is just waiting. No, that's not for you. Somehow you'll escape all that waiting and staying. You'll find the bright places where boom bands are playing. Thank you to the Oncofertility Consortium for steering me away from that waiting place to a place that is bright and without a doubt where boom bands are playing.